welcome back. This is your host Celia speaking, ready to give you all of the weekly buzz from July 19th through the 25th that I found notable as an art historian now that I have finally finished moving. A couple of administration announcements for this week, the first of which, we will not have a Beesness next week, Tuesday, August 4th. Your girl is going to be in Cincinnati hanging out with my college friends, catching up, recuperating from the time that I have already had this summer. And yeah, just be aware of that. Be aware that Frank Lloyd Wright Part 3 is in the works. It is so very near completion. You should be seeing that by the time you hear this episode in just a few days. And now let's dive in. Follow-ups first, a new design has been chosen for the National Museum of Ecuador after the massive public outcry about the original design. Sources tell us that the controversial reset of the competition process has resulted in a new replacement design called Estratos Vivos, or Living Strata, which was created by a partnership of two local firms and a Japanese architecture firm. As you know, we've been following this story because of that public backlash. How many debates have been started, especially in Ecuador, about government transparency, architectural judgment, and, quote, the role of public opinion in shaping major cultural projects, end quote, as our sources put it. Meanwhile, 3 lawsuits were filed on June 29th and July 1st by activists with the Let's Defend the Gelman Collection group aiming to stop Frida Kahlo works from leaving Mexico. All 3 of the suits target Mexico's National Institute of Fine Arts and Literature, or INBAL, and were followed after the announcement from Banco Santander Foundation that its forthcoming art center would display holdings of the Gelman Collection, which has been mired in controversy since January, along with other exhibitions during its September 8th opening date, which means that the Gelman Collection works would be traveling overseas again on a 2-year tour in just a few short weeks. So this is being seen as perhaps a necessary escalation in the ongoing battle over the collection's fate because, as Art News reminds us, quote, the Gelman Collection is considered one of the most important holdings of Mexican art, with important works by some of the country's most influential 20th century artists, end quote, like Kahlo and Diego Rivera. So much so that at least 30 works in the collection are, quote, categorized as artistic monuments under Mexican law, meaning they cannot be permanently removed from the country, end quote, and only with permission from INBAL. Yet questions about the Banco Santander Foundation and the INBAL agreements and relationships leading to the works' continued abroad displays have been left unanswered. This leaves us all a bit uncomfortable and questioning what role the government agencies, arts institutions, and the public are really playing here in this battle over national cultural heritage. We are also concerned at Highbrow Honey that the reason they've decided to take things to the courts is because, as the lead plaintiff in the lawsuits told Hyperallergic, members of the activist group as well as their relatives have had commissions and funding withdrawn since the group gained public attention in March, and that some have faced political backlash as well. We were relieved to hear that following a week of being considered missing after his release from a maximum security facility outside of Havana, dissident Cuban artist Luis Manuel Otero Alcantara arrived in Miami. He had been issued a humanitarian visa and been confirmed as able to enter the U.S. to serve out his forced exile by the U.S. Embassy official in Havana. And, of course, while we're happy to hear that he's all right, if disappointed to be forced out of his homeland, our sources for today do remind us that, quote, other dissident artists, including Grammy-winning rapper and fellow San Isidro movement member Michael Osorbo Castillo Perez, remain behind bars as political prisoners, end quote, even as the country faces a worsening humanitarian crisis amid a U.S.-enforced oil blockade. Another major update, the European Education and Culture Executive Agency has decided to go through with the cancellation of Venice Biennale funding over Russian participation, definitively stating that it will not provide the Biennale with a previously multi-year €2 million or $2.3 million grant after months of warnings, specifically because of the event's inclusion in the 2026 edition of The Nation, amidst its ongoing assault on Ukraine. Venice Biennale President Pietrangelo Buttafuoco responded by calling the EU's withdrawal, quote, entirely political, certainly not legal, and still less cultural, end quote, in a public address criticizing the decision on Thursday, saying the prestigious event will continue to engage with Russia in spite of political pressures not to. And while, of course, losing those EU funds will not really matter in the grand scheme of the Venice Biennale funding, the fact that they really did this is sort of stunning. This is the strongest rebuke yet we've seen by the EU to the event's organizers, who, Art Firm points out, quote, after Russia's February 2022 invasion of Ukraine had issued a statement saying they would, inner quote, not accept the presence at any of its events of official delegations, institutions, or persons tied in any capacity to the Russian government, end all quotes. Clearly, not living up to that statement has cost them. Meanwhile, our sources learned that the Federal Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, according to an internal draft circulated last week of a proposal aiming to rewrite sections of the 1966 National Historic Preservation Act, is aiming to slacken the rules around modifying landmarks. Now, I know what you're thinking, honeys. Changing a few words in a legal code seems like a very simple and minimal thing, but as Charles A. Birnbaum, CEO of the Cultural Landscape Foundation, explained, quote, the proposal actually eliminates language that says, inner quote, the views of the public are essential to informed federal decision-making in the Section 106 process, end all quotes. So, as Marion F. Werkheiser, a founding attorney at Cultural Heritage Partners, told today's sources, quote, what is going to happen regularly is communities are not going to know that major projects are happening in their backyard until the bulldozers show up, end quote. The not knowing problem is one some already think is happening too often in the D.C. area, and at its core, the draft proposal seems to confirm some fears that changing the existing rules will give the council, and thus Trump, quote, nearly unchecked power to move ahead with a portfolio of controversial projects, monumentalizing him in the U.S. Capitol, while also threatening historic sites around the country, end quote, as Art News put it. Last week also saw CEO and founder of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, make art world headlines once again by making a $75 million donation to Vanderbilt University's new endeavor, a satellite school at the site of the former California College of the Arts campus. A recap on the background of that acquisition. The takeover of San Francisco's last remaining private art school offered a lifeline to the institution amid declining enrollment and a $20 million deficit, but news of the merger was received with doubt and some scorn by the art world, especially the local one. Lindsay White, a San Francisco-based artist, educator, and CCA alum, told Hyperallergic when the Huangs donated a $22.5 million gift to the school prior to its closure in February 2025 that, quote, these billionaires would much rather play God and remake our art schools in their own image than support a 120-year-old legacy fine art school, end quote. She was referring more than likely also to the acquisition of San Francisco Art Institute by Emerson Collective, Laureen Powell Jobs' nonprofit, 2 years after its closure. The Art newspaper reports that Vanderbilt will open what is now scheduled to be titled the Jen Sun and Lori Huang College of Art, Architecture, and Design in San Francisco in 2027. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, Trump was accused of sanitizing George Washington's slavery history in a new display, the panels of which were installed by the administration on Wednesday the 15th, just 6 months after Trump ordered the removal of the outdoor exhibition, Freedom and Slavery in the Making of a New Nation, from the president's house site, a permanent exhibition co-created by the city and the federal government, centered on the 9 individuals Washington himself enslaved in his local residence. According to local activists, federal judges this month allowed the administration to install altered panels which minimized the Founding Fathers' participation in the institution of slavery after the courts had previously ordered the return of the original panels. While we're concerned, of course, about that rewriting of history in this exhibition, though our sources also told us that various advocacy groups are joining the city's lawsuits against the Trump administration and looking into all available legal options to restore the original signage. We also heard from trial attorney Michael Cord, who pointed out that, quote, what this president has done with regard to the president's house lays the foundation for himself or the next right-wing fascist president to get rid of any symbols he doesn't like, end quote, which seems especially likely given that Friday of last week, Trump escalated his battle with the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History by ordering government agencies to, quote, install temporary exhibits or signage on NPS-maintained sidewalks, walkways, and land used by the public, end quote, to correct what it calls, quote, inaccurate information presented in the museum, end quote, just days after Director of The National Museum of American History, Anthea M. Hardig, faced 2 congressional hearings over alleged political bias in the museum's curation, as well as questions about her own loyalty to the United States. Last week also saw Brooklyn-based artist Daniel and Paris-based painter Nastaran Shahbazi filing a lawsuit against New York City Gallery The Whole, as well as its owner, in Manhattan on June 16th over nearly $50,000 in payments allegedly owed to the artists. They claim the funds were instead diverted illegally towards rent, operating expenses, other creditors, and other artists. The artist claims seem credible given that an art newspaper report published earlier this year about the gallery's LA location closure featured claims from its workers that the gallery delayed paying their wages, on top of complaints from other unnamed artists about delayed payment for sold works. And the Why We Care, this is the second case of non-payment suits we've reported on in as many weeks, and these sorts of issues eat away at the trust in the art world and cause major breakdowns in institutional individual relationships. Meanwhile, talk about bad news bears. The Art Institute of Chicago, according to the institution and union AFSCME Council 31, will cut its entire custodial staff, that is at least 23 unionized workers and 25 in total. The proposed switch would take effect August 14th, but an anonymous AIC staff member confirmed that the employees concerned were only told on June 29th. And of course, the Why We Care is the museum's union has called this plan a, quote, devastating and unconscionable injustice, unquote, in violation of union agreements in a circulating petition on the matter, because while their pay may not change much, these employees will lose AIC-specific benefits such as eligibility for public service loan forgiveness. And we can't help but notice how often these sorts of staff members, custodial, visitor services, install teams, are the least paid and benefited, yet the first ones cut when an institution struggles in any way. I must ask, have we tried reducing the CEO and board salaries? Just a thought. Another headline raising eyebrows across the globe, the former Victoria and Albert Museum's academic programs head has accused it of quote-unquote racist behavior in a letter sent to administration shortly after Yuko Kikuchi resigned from her post in January of this year, which was recently shared with our regular sources, including Art Newspaper. In it, she cited pushback on her proposals, feelings of marginalization among senior staff as the only person of color, and microaggressions, and asked the British institution's director, Tristram Hunt, and Museum Research Committee trustees to address its, quote, culture of systemic racism, end quote. Perhaps most notable, Kikuchi's letter included, quote, the signatures of a dozen academics and an appendix with student testimonials recounting other alleged instances of cultural insensitivity, racial discrimination, and problematic curricula, end quote. Although there have been some efforts by the museum to combat such allegations of discrimination in recent years, there have still been many allegations during that same period, which it seems to be mostly glossing over to its own detriment rather than seriously and continuously engaging with these concerns. Which lead us to the very interesting results of a new study which argues that the art world's inequity is shaped by institutional networks, not just representation. That study was published in Nature Communications and co-authored by art market economist Magnus Rush. The researchers involved found that, quote, the gender makeup of the museums and galleries with which an artist is connected can be a stronger predictor of auction success than the artist's own gender, end quote, after analyzing the exhibition histories of more than 65,000 contemporary artists. Rush now argues that changing that reality requires diversifying the networks through which recognition begins, since women remain underrepresented across exhibitions and the market, with the greatest imbalances found at the most prestigious institutions. In happier news, the New York Foundation for the Arts, in its joint fellowship program with the New York State Council on the Arts, has provided each recipient of the Artistic Fellowship Program, all 132 of them, $8,000 in unrestricted cash for a combined total of $903,000 US. The Why We Care here, the awarded artists are all based in New York and range in age from 25 to 90, so great representation across thought and experience there, plus the 5 disciplines it awards to rotate every year so that each medium gets a visibility and a cash boost. For example, this year was craft and sculpture, digital and electronic arts, nonfiction literature, poetry and printmaking, drawing, and book arts. Our sources also reported that common themes the judge panel recognized in the submitted work included identity and communication, quote, an overall reckoning with artificial intelligence, end quote, and the blurring of boundaries between traditional disciplines. Hopping continents once again, the European Central Bank revealed 10 shortlisted design proposals for Euro banknotes centered on either the theme of European culture or rivers and birds on July 23rd, and has asked for the opinion of the public via a public survey open through the 21st of September to help them make the final call on which theme gets printed. That shortlist also includes prints of Ludwig van Beethoven, Miguel de Cervantes, and Marie Curie, as well as, of course, Leonardo da Vinci. And the why we care here, those selected designs were chosen by an independent panel from over 1,200 submitted proposals by artists, and this instance marks the first full redesign of the bills since they began circulating in 2002. And according to reports in Le Parisien and France, a group of thieves allegedly entered a museum in Burgundy the normal way by buying tickets before grabbing a 2,500-year-old 24-karat Celtic gold collar belonging to the V Treasure archaeological find and fleeing out the front door. And the notable part of this story, the museum actually tried to stop the swipers this time, yet still failed. Local Mayor Jérémy Brigand confirmed in statements according to Le Parisien that the museum had implemented extra security measures after it faced, quote, 2 previous failed nighttime burglary attempts, end quote, in the past 8 months. It seems the Louvre heist spectacle has inspired other professional thieves to design their own heists, as these perpetrators and the several other heisters we've covered across France since were also described as organized and speedy. Amid all the attention on the current looting, though, Le Monde also tells us that 86 years after Nazis attacked and burned the city of Orleans, the Musée des Beaux-Arts d'Orléans is trying to get its 424 looted works back by launching a wanted poster campaign in the signature Wild West style. The museum's director, Olivia Voisin, said via email to Art News that the goal is twofold, quote, to make this history known and give a renewed life to these missing paintings, and to invite everyone to participate in this search so that everyone stays alert and no one can ever again say we didn't know, end quote. The museum has been trying to raise awareness about the works for several years, but this new approach has, quote, allowed us to capture public interest so that today people are talking and hearing about it, end quote, by making the topic more approachable and lighter in feeling. It seems to be working. We wish them luck. Our sources also told us that the Heritage Unit of the Municipality of Chillán has uncovered and is now meticulously restoring 2 1970s murals by Chilean artist Julio Escames in the municipality's Hall of Honor, with the first expected to be completed in December of 2027. How meticulously, you ask? The project involves millimeter by millimeter removal of 12 layers of decades-old paint, and the fascinating history surrounding their erasure is really the why we care here. The murals, titled The Beginning and the End, were commissioned in 1969 by Eduardo Contreras Maya, the mayor of Chillán and a member of the Chilean Communist Party, and completed in the style of Mexican muralists Diego Rivera and David Alfaro Siqueiros, but were covered up after Pinochet's regime ordered their removal following his 1973 coup d'etat. Clearly somebody disagreed with that order, so preserved them under layers of white paint instead, showing admirable defiance in protection of heritage and the arts. We also learned that Sibley's Reich Concert Hall is slated for demolition despite never opening. The complex in the nation of Georgia was mostly completed in 2012 and was immediately considered one of the city's most recognizable architectural feats, but never has been used. As of last week, the local city hall's architecture department didn't just issue a permit allowing for Macro Constructions, its current owner, to demolish it, but mandated the concert hall's destruction by December 25th. The project was, to be fair, plagued by issues related to government changes during its construction, including suspensions of the work and several ownership changes. But guess who's mad? Studio Fuxas, the designer, who stated in a press release that, quote, neither the public authorities nor any other stakeholder has engaged with the studio despite our repeated willingness to cooperate. In more than 60 years of professional practice, this is the first time Studio Fuxas has faced the demolition of one of its projects without ever being invited to discuss possible alternatives, end quote. And so this is obviously another case of rights of the artist versus rights of the owner/host, who gets to do what with an unwanted, in this case, work. We're also wondering why exactly it has to be destroyed versus converted, renovated, etc., especially since the government figures commenting on the demolition just keep saying that it's ugly. But that's not really a good enough excuse to destroy art. And our last bit of buzz for the week. Last week, a founding Guerrilla Girl was unmasked as artist Joyce Kolsloff. The true identities of the group's members, who took on the names of notable women artists past as pseudonyms, had been one of the art world's best-kept secrets since the group began its radical guerrilla-style interventions in 1985, which have exposed misogyny and racism in the art world through protest and humor ever since. Some examples that you might know: The Advantages of Being a Woman Artist from 1988, Do Women Have to Be Naked to Get into the Met Museum from 1989, Bus Companies Are More Enlightened Than Art Galleries from 2014, and them pulling out of a contract with Phaidon over the ties of the publisher's owner, Leon Black, to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. After 41 years, however, acclaimed pattern and decoration artist Joyce Kolsloff, already well known as a founding member of the Heresies feminist publishing collective, revealed herself to be the Guerrilla Girl known as Lyubov Popova in a recent interview for the Feminist Interview Project, confirming also that she eventually left it in 1991. Their identities were kept secret for all this time in part by gorilla masks that the group wore. Kolsloff said this was a choice made to keep the attention on the issues the group raised, not on its individuals. And Kolsloff is, of course, one of very few to reveal herself. The second most recent was artist Robin Tews, who confirmed only last year that she worked under the alias Alice Neal. So very huge revelation, especially for feminist art historians, and we're looking forward to hearing that forthcoming interview when it drops. And that's all we've got for today. Thank you, honeys, for tuning in once again. We look forward to catching up with you as soon as possible in Frank Lloyd Wright Part 3 and also our Beesness the week after next. In the meantime, take care, hydrate or dehydrate. We'll be talking soon. Today's Highbrow Honey production of The Beesness was researched, fact-checked, hosted, edited, produced, etc. by Celia Bugno, yours truly, and Chris Meinhold remains our master of music.